well done, first of all, to everybody who's pulled this off for, I think, the 20th year, somebody said. So that's such an achievement. And to get so many people in a room after the years that we've had is just amazing. And this is the most people that I've seen in over 2 years. And also one of the first in-person addresses that I've given for a few years. So I'm just going to pretend that you're all people on a Zoom call. It'll be fine. Hopefully my Wi-Fi holds up. So when I was invited to speak today, I hesitated at first because, my first thought was when I heard it was a kind of a STEM thing is I'm really not very scientific or technical. So, and, that wasn't my forte in school and it's not something I've done in my career. However, I was reassured that that was fine and that this is just about sharing stories and inspiring other people and hopefully other young women. So with that disclaimer, I accepted and really happy to be here and to see so many familiar faces. There's so many, just spotted Alfred there, more and more familiar faces I'm spotting as I go around the room. So obviously this is clearly a real event in the Swansea calendar. I can't believe you haven't invited me before. I'm happy to be here now. So, happy International Women's Day, I need to say that, and huge big up to all the amazing women in the room. So just give yourselves a round. So I'm going to start with the main reason I guess I have eventually been invited is because of my recent appointment and announcement as the next Children's Commissioner for Wales, which is a role I'm just so honoured and humbled and privileged to have been given that opportunity and that huge challenge. Really, it is such a big job. There is such a lot that we need to do for our children, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. I start after Easter in April for a 7-year tenure, so I'll have a good chance at getting stuck in and hopefully making a difference during that time. But I don't underestimate the size of that challenge. I'm really happy, and I've got a big challenge, particularly to follow in the footsteps of the incredible work that the current Commissioner, Sally Holland, and her team have delivered for the last 7 years. I'm sure most of you know Sally and know of her work. So that is, that's quite a formidable act to follow. She's made incredible changes, such as bringing about the smacking ban, ending physical punishment for children in Wales, and that is just huge. Never before had children in Wales had even the same rights as adults do, not to be physically assaulted. So that is something that I just aspire to hopefully being. If I can be half of it as impactful as her, then I'll be happy. I forgot, I've got slides. There's me, you don't need to see that. Picture taken by the amazing Rasa. I can never wear that green top again. So yes, the task that I have ahead of me is huge, no less because of the very sad situation that so many children in Wales live in. Levels of poverty have been stubbornly around the 30% mark for years and years, despite so many different government and other people's efforts, and sadly, have recently been increasing even above that, and are likely to be even worse than that official statistic now if we think about the cost of living crisis and rising energy prices and so on. And what that really means is not just a statistic on a screen, it's a reality, that many children right at this moment will not be having the lovely meal that we're about to have. They won't be as warm as we all are. They won't have the clothes that we are all privileged to have. And that is, today, right now, in Wales in 2022. So, that's just one of the things that really has to change. It's a big task, nobody can achieve it on their own, but I think that's the ambition that I will take into the job. And aside from material inequality, we're also living in a time which I think could only be described as an age of anxiety. We're having children and young people's mental health has just become so much worse. It's become almost a defining feature of the last few years. And between the pandemic, the closure of schools, loss of freedom to socialise, loss of freedom to exercise, all of these things have really come together to create a perfect storm. Accelerating climate change, now the tragic situation which is unfolding in Ukraine. There is so much to rightly worry about that it's not surprising that children and young people are really feeling the effects of all of these pressures on their mental health. So we can't always change the world. I wish we could, influence things going on outside of Wales, but in Wales we can make sure that the services are there to support any child or young person who is going through a poor mental health experience. We know the services are just not sufficient at the moment and have been underinvested for many years, if not decades. So that is also something that we have to get better at. Believe it or not, despite what might be a doom and gloom picture that I'm painting, I am actually an optimist, and I think that I am a glass half full kind of person, and I take great solace in the efforts of organisations like Technocamps and the work of so many organisations that I see represented around the room, because all of you here are not only hoping that things get better, but actually getting up every day and doing something about that. You are putting the graft in to make a difference, whether big or small, and collectively that has to make a difference. It already is, and things would be so much worse if all of you were working so hard day in, day out to make that change. So I really applaud you because of it's not just about having that vision and that dream, but it's the practical support and encouragement, opportunities and activities that you practically and physically deliver, which makes a big difference and could make a huge difference to lifting a child out of poverty or out of a very dark place and onto a path of success and fulfillment and being realizing their true potential in life. So I really applaud all of you, and I just want to applaud you now. I'm going to touch on my own story a bit now, which I guess is an example of personally having been supported through a difficult situation. So I arrived in Wales as a 13-month-old refugee baby with my parents. So there's me there with my dad. I think I was younger than 13 months there. Because they were refugees, they were forced to flee Chile and the dictatorship which was happening at that time. They had to flee in fear of their lives, and in fear of my life and their own lives. They had been student activists of the democratically elected socialist government of Allende, when in 1973 a military coup led by General Pinochet changed everything overnight, and thousands of people were killed, murdered and imprisoned. Thousands more just disappeared, never to be seen or heard from again. My own dad was imprisoned and tortured, but not for very long. He managed to get released, and then he changed his name, and they kind of lived in this way for a few years. But then when I was born, that's when things changed for them, because they knew that the regime was taking babies from people who didn't agree with them and giving the babies to people who did agree with them. As crazy as that sounds, that's what was happening. So they, with that knowledge, that was just a risk too great for them, and they took the very difficult decision to try and leave Chile. So yeah, that was that. Fortunately, there were really great organisations made up of people very much like you, I imagine, who were helping refugees. And one of those was the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, as well as something that was called the World University Service, which at the time helped students who were forced to leave their home countries and help them continue their studies elsewhere. And my parents had the choice between coming to Swansea or Sweden. And I guess here tells me that they chose Swansea. And yeah, I think they just didn't speak any Swedish. But what they must have gone through, we've all seen it over the last week on our TV screens. Very sadly echoes of that, and the look on children's faces, on parents when they're having to flee a situation, leave their home countries, leave everything, leave their jobs, their friends, their own parents. That is just something that is tragic to see it happening again now in Europe, but it is something that has been repeated sadly in many places across the world and across history. So my parents took up places at Swansea University, and there's a couple of pictures there. They were really fortunate. We were all really fortunate to be really welcomed in Swansea and in Wales, and that's something that you should all be really proud of. That Wales is such a strongly welcoming place and has such a history and a tradition and a culture of welcome, and actually puts that into practice. It's not just warm words. They were also really fortunate to be able to find employment. My dad became a teacher, then a social worker, and eventually an educational psychologist. And my mum became a teacher and a social worker. And I'm sure, I'm standing in front of the picture, but I'm sure, they look a bit older now, but I'm sure they're known to many of you because they know so many people. And they've made such a huge contribution to Swansea. So for me, growing up, and my brother, who I haven't got a photo of him, but I did see him downstairs leaving the gym, so life was pretty normal growing up, as normal, I didn't know any difference. And I was really well supported, not just by my family, but by some amazing teachers. I went to Parklands Primary, there's me, in Miss Nielsen's class, Janet Nielsen, I don't think she's here, but she's still around. And Alpha School, and then I went to Gorsinan Tertiary, now known as Gower College, and was really just happy and fortunate. It was also lucky that I lived. I'm still alive, but it was a time when university was much more financially accessible than it is now. So I really didn't have to think twice about whether to apply or not. So I was really lucky to get a place at Cambridge University, where I went to read social and political science, and really, thoroughly enjoyed my time there. It was an incredibly sexist, classist, and sometimes racist place. But, most very old institutions are, so we won't hold it against them. But there were things like the Pit Club, which was the Cambridge equivalent to the Bullingdon Club, where, women weren't allowed in, and we just got to hear about the boys' escapades the next day, and so on. But they really want more applicants from Wales, firstly, and from state schools. So if any of you are working with young people who are thinking of applying, I had a brilliant time. It's just, the sexism and all of that, it's just, you have to just accept it to a degree and get on with it and take the opportunities that are there. And I would really encourage, I'm happy to speak to anyone who wants to pick my brains on that, because I think we really need to be more ambitious for our children and young people in Wales. We have to expect more. Being average isn't what we should expect. We need to really have high expectations and high ambitions of children and young people from all backgrounds, but recognising that it's not an equal playing field, and that people have different starting points. So some children and young people will need different levels and types of support, and I'm sure that you're all doing that in your different ways. But just to make the point that I really want to see that kind of thing continue, because it is so important. And I'm nearing. Don't worry, Kevin. I'm nearing the end.
You're all right. Give me time.
Okay. So moving just briefly on to the work that I've been doing for the last 17 years. And it has revolved around, the theme, I suppose, that I've kind of carved out of giving people a chance, especially those that need it most. It's an organisation called EAST, which stands for Ethnic Minorities and Youth Support Team, which I helped to start from scratch in 2005, and is now a large charity working across Wales with a team of over 70 staff. And yeah, I'm proud to say it's probably the most successful ethnic minority charity in Wales, with Welsh Government's lead body for race and various other things. And more than that, we provide really important support to thousands and thousands of children, young people, families, refugees, asylum seekers, people who just need a helping hand every single year. It started in Swansea, and it started because I met a group of young ethnic minority boys in Swansea who were running a pilot project through Swansea Council. The pilot project was really successful, but Swansea Council said they didn't have any more money, so I helped them to write a constitution and get their first amount of funding of £5,000 or something, and then it just grew from there. So that was 17 years ago. That was us a few years ago, actually. We're bigger now, but it has gone from strength to strength. Some amazing women I have to pay tribute to who helped to found it. One particular woman, her name is Mamina Ali, and she was the founder with the original vision for this project. And also another woman called Shella Khan, who is now the chairperson of the organisation. So we didn't really plan it to be led by women, but it's happened to have worked out that way. And I also have to just pay tribute to the hard work of the men involved. There were 3 youth workers involved at the very beginning, Shahab, Hilal and Nikki, who probably lots of you know those names, and they were very young themselves at the time, but they put such a lot of heart and passion into their work and have really made sure that it enjoys the success it does today. So it's not just about the women. There's some more pictures there. So yeah, this is a mentoring into public life project, and it's just about giving people opportunities to reach those positions of, so-called power and influence, which can help them, but I think it really importantly helps the organisations to be more effective and more representative, and to really have the skills and the diversity within them to ensure that they in turn can support the communities that they serve. A few more pictures of awards and things. So as I just come to finishing this evening, I want to just say a few more words about the tragic situation unfolding in Ukraine. I thought we just can't gloss over that, given how I don't have the words to say how sad and awful it is. It's heartbreaking, and we're seeing it up close, and it almost unfolding in real life. So even for me, even as a child of a refugee family, I still find it unbelievable that this is happening right now in Europe, and that possibility of nuclear war is still all very terrifying, really. And I think the fact that we're so shocked, I think, is a bit of a a wake-up call. Like, we probably maybe should have seen it coming a little bit, and maybe we've all just been a bit deluded and a bit too comfortable in our, in where we are, because actually armed conflict has been a reality for most of the globe, for most of the last 100 years at least, and we're fortunate in Europe that it has been in other places affecting people of, maybe other colours and other creeds for the most part, but this example shows that nobody is immune, and everybody can be affected. But looking at the positive, the humanity and the compassion that's been shown by, the people in Poland, the people right across Europe, and the people in Wales, just the amount of money that's been collected, and the amount of people who have just stood up and said, we want to do something, and they've led the way, often far ahead of governments. Having said that, I think the Welsh government's response is also to be applauded. They have a commitment to Wales being a nation of sanctuary, which is fantastic, and that's me holding up that a few years ago in the Senedd. So yeah, I'm going to finish now with the message that it really is fantastic to be with you all on such an important day, and thank you for all of your efforts in making this happen, because it's the happening part, it's the actual physically, doing it that matters. It's not good intentions and thinking nice things, it's making it happen and acting on your convictions, and celebrating women as you are by having me here, supporting young people as you do in your work every day, and making Wales a better place. So keep up the great work, everybody. Thank you for the invitation, and diolch yn fawr, and enjoy your meals.